So October is one of my favorite months. It's the month of my birthday, so that's very fun. But it's also the time of the year where the fall foliage is, just splendid and abundant here in the Northeast. The days are still warm enough to be outdoors all day long, and the nights cold and crisp, so sleeping is definitely easier. Apples are abundant, which is really fun, and I'm reminded every autumn just of the passage of time and the importance of being in the moment. October is also an especially important month politically, particularly in the U.S., due to the phenomenon known as the, quote, October surprise. Since the national election day falls in early November, any major news story or event that emerges in October can have a significant and immediate impact on voters' decisions. Thus, an October surprise. This is something I just learned. October is also when campaigning intensifies, early voting begins, and the Congress here in the U.S. spends September and October hopefully setting policy for the upcoming year. Local candidates are equally active during this time, and though fewer folks tend to vote in local elections, unfortunately, I'm asking you, if you live in Dutchess County, New York, please, please, please be very aware of a particularly important race for Dutchess County Court Judge. This month on Gyno Curious, I am asking that you either re-listen or for the first time hear about Nikki Addimando, a domestic violence survivor who was further abused by the justice system. You're going to hear from Nikki herself, Michelle Horton, her sister, who wrote a terrific book that I encourage you to read, and she will talk about that, as well as a couple of women who are part of the I Stand With Nikki support group, who have been along Nikki and Michelle's side for years now. Nikki's story reminds us of how important local elections are and how our votes matter. Finally, you're going to hear an interview with Kara Gary, a candidate running for the Dutchess County Court Judge seat. I'm hoping by listening throughout October, you will learn how important it is to stand behind Kara and vote for her in November. Please listen with an open heart, and if you care about women and their well-being, you will consider voting for Kara in November. Good afternoon. This is Vulva Views with Amy and Allison. Please, if you like what you hear today, let us know by sending comments to comments@radiofreerhiniecliff.org or to gynocurious@gmail.com. Give us 5 stars and share us with friends and family. We love to hear from you, both how you respond to a show and if you have an idea that you want Allison and me to talk about, let us know. So today, Allison and I want to welcome Michelle Horton, who's a writer and advocate living in New York, Hudson's Valley. Michelle has written a book recently called Dear Sister, a breathtaking memoir about 2 sisters and the high-profile case involving her sister, Nikki Addimando, who was incarcerated for killing her abuser after a lengthy trial in 2019. As a result, Michelle took over raising Nikki's young children and became a warrior in the battle with the criminal justice system, which is known for furthering the abuse of women, trans, non-binary, and folks of color in their attempt to seek justice. Through the Nicole Addimando Community Defense Committee, Michelle continues to speak out for her sister and the countless other victims of domestic violence criminalized for their acts of survival. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful that you're here with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Allison is going to start our conversation. So here's to both of you.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing this story. And also, I want to thank you for writing this book. And I just wanted to share a little bit about my background because I am so familiar with these women and this population and the population that your sister became a part of, because years ago, one of my first clinical placements, field placements, was in a place called Non-Traditional Employment for Women, and I was responsible for all the intake assessments and counseling. A majority of the incredibly inspiring, powerful women that walked through that door had just been released from incarceration for killing their abusers.
Wow.
Yes. And so I just got chills because the only time I've met people that know about this, that speak about this, was when I did that work. And to this day, I still volunteer and I send clothing and I give them my time and whatever I can, because it was so clear to me, even from the first person that came in, that they were the victim, that they had done something to save their own lives and had been punished for it. So I am very enthusiastic about speaking to you, and I'm very interested in hearing your story and your sister's experience.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that, so I'm excited too. I think a lot of people, when they hear the bare bones of the story, that there's a woman who was in a domestic violence situation, fought back and was punished, they think, oh, wow, that's so rare. That must be a 1 in a million scenario. But someone like you knows it's
happening all of the time.
Yeah.
All of the time. And I was there for 2 years, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women would come in with the same story. And I think another misconception is that people think, oh, well, let's blame the woman here. Sure, maybe there was some abuse and volatility, but she must have went crazy and killed him. Instead of realizing, no, actually, they were almost killed multiple times until they were pushed to the point of self-defense for survival.
Right. There is this myth of, even with Nikki, of people who were sympathetic to her even said, well, of course, how much abuse can you take before you snap? It's
right.
Like, that's not exactly right.
Right. Well, if you would just start maybe you can tell us the story of what happened with your sister first, and then we can sort of delve back into this and the background and educate people more on this essentially epidemic in itself.
Yeah.
I would love to hear what happened. And again, I'm so sorry that this happened.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Of course.
And I can tell you, so, you know, like you said, I wrote this book, and I wrote the book from my perspective because my sister's story, what she endured at the hands of her abuser and at the criminal justice system's hands, is her own story. But I was standing right next to her, and I watched it from a different perspective, and I had so many conversations with experts and with people where I had to learn a lot while she was completely isolated.
Wow.
So from my perspective, what happened is we were just normal sisters, normal in quotes, you know, just, you know, raising our kids not that far away from each other, saw each other a lot. And then one day a cop knocks on my door and basically says she's at the police station. Someone needs to get her children. And then throughout that day, it's slowly revealed that she killed him. Mm-hmm. And then, so that's where I'm coming into it. And I'm thinking, like, what? Mm-hmm. My baby sister, like the kindest, most maternal person I ever met.
Right. How could she be capable of that?
Yeah. Her kids were 2 and 4 years old.
Ugh.
They were her life. She would never just take away their father. So I was so confused. And I went into it with open eyes. Tell me what is going on. And I was, within hours, brought into the circle of women who had been trying to get her out of a very dangerous situation for over a year. She had made many attempts to leave. Each time was punished for it. Kept going back, like, you know, tale as old as time with domestic violence victims. And I learned how many people in the system knew of Nikki as a victim. Police wanted to arrest her partner. DA's office had files of the abuse. I mean, it was tracked. It was, every flag was raised. And so I went into it thinking, oh my God, like, how didn't I see this? Mm-hmm. What a terrible situation. But obviously the system knew. So they're going to see this for what it is. And then very quickly, it was a double whammy of she was in a very bad situation. And oh my God, how is the system responding to this? They're responding to it by treating her like a criminal and punishing her.
Yes. And I want to just back up for something that you said. You said tale as old as time, where the abused returns to the relationship. And this is something that I just want to take a moment to say. For those of you who are judging someone that returns to an abuser, there are so many variables that go into that decision. The tremendous fear is one of them. Protecting their children. Usually there's psychological abuse. they are not financially supporting themselves. And it's the idea that leaving and being alone is more terrifying than returning to the home, because the abuser is also usually saying, if you leave, I'll take the kids forever. You'll never work again. I'll kill you if you leave. And so the threats that go towards the idea of that person escaping tend to be much more severe than the idea of, well, I'll try again and I'll go home because I want to be with my family.
And they're not unrealistic threats.
No.
I mean, you see it time and again of if a victim is able to leave safely, there's post-separation abuse in the family court where they can lose their kids because of parental alienation and all of these things.
And that's a big angle that abusers take. I will take the kids away from you. Right. And anyone that's a mother can attest to the idea that it is the most terrifying thing to have someone say, I'll take your kids from you.
Yep. And we know statistically that is when women are in the highest danger, is when they leave. That is statistically when most women lose their lives.
Yes. It's just terrible. I'm getting chills throughout this entire conversation because it's just such a devastating situation. So you didn't know anything was happening. She hadn't told you that she was concerned about her relationship, or even the kids hadn't indicated anything?
I mean, she had bruising on her, which was always explained in various ways.
Right.
And I had to have a hard reckoning with myself afterwards, because I was in this space where I was actually practicing mindfulness. I was practicing seeing what was in front of me. And I had to say, like, how did this happen that all of this was happening and it was hidden from me and I didn't see the signs. I didn't put two and two together. I knew she had a history of childhood sexual abuse. And I mean, I say knew like in quotation marks, because there were signs of it, and I had conversations with family that made me put things together, like why Nikki was always so modest, why she wouldn't change in front of people. I knew she hated sex. She cringed about sex. So I thought she was just in a sexless
relationship, marriage.
Just that like they didn't really like each other that much, but like they were together for the kids, and it was in the realm of just normal. I had no way to even begin to imagine the horrors that she was dealing with.
So tell me then, when you were pulled into this circle of women and people, and you realized that this had been going on, what was it that you learned was happening, or for how long was that happening?
Well, I learned that it was a slow escalation over time, which increased after the birth of each of their kids, which I had a lot of questions. I took time to ask questions like, well, why would someone being pregnant increase their risk of being abused? And I had to have a trauma therapist explain to me, actually, that's quite common. That is, there's like the lethality assessments that are given to victims. And one of them is, are you pregnant? Because that increases the likelihood of lethality. I
know. And isn't that terrifying, considering you would think when a woman is carrying a child, people would want to be more delicate and careful with her, but it increases the issue.
So I had no idea. I also learned a lot about pornography addiction, because that was another question I had. How did this happen? Because, the abuse my sister suffered was sexual in nature. It wasn't about sex. It was about punishing her. It was about control and power, and punishing her for stepping out of line, for talking back. He would punish her by all of this like torture porn. Like he would watch a lot of it, and then reenact it in punishing. He would post it. He would write captions. I saw all of these
with
things.
Your sister he would reenact it with your sister, and
then write like captions and hashtags about teaching her a lesson about her being disrespectful.
Oh my God.
Posting it. Police saw it, tracked it, took screenshots, gave it to the DA. Like all of these things happened. The nature, it wasn't like he was like, coming home in a rage and beating her up.
Right.
It was in these intimate situations that for my sister, that's her deepest wound, her childhood wound of sexual abuse. There's nothing you could do to her that would be more just psychologically damaging than that. Just knowing my sister, I knew that. So it was like even a deeper heartbreak for me to know what she went through, because if there's anything that's going to make her shut down and freeze and,
disassociate,
it's that. And I mean, I didn't really put a lot of this in the book because I didn't want to be making armchair theories about someone who's not here. But from the evidence, which I do talk about in the book, it's very clear there was a pornography addiction. And another thing I learned from a therapist is that I was married to someone who was an addict to opiates.
Another very common problem.
Yeah. It was about a year out of that, ending that relationship, that everything happened with my sister. So the therapist was explaining to me, you know, with addiction, obviously with opiates, you need more and more opiates, you know, over time. With pornography addiction, it's taboo. So it's more and more taboo, which is where he escalated to these very dark parts of the web and was reenacting them. And I think the abuse was just so horrific that, I don't know, maybe people didn't know what to do about it, but...
or chose to not believe that it was as bad.
Yeah.
Because that's very common. Denial. I mean, that's why they say denial is a powerful tool. And I'm sure there was tremendous terror.
Yeah.
You know, if your sister wasn't even telling you, then I wonder, those who did know, was there some level of her asking them not to say anything?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was humiliating for her.
Of course.
It was, the deepest fear was that people would find this out about her and judge her and humiliate her. And he could use it all in court and say, I'm just going to say, this is, you know, look at you. Like, this is
horrible.
What you like.
This is what you liked, and we did this, and now you want to hold it against me.
Yeah, she's a bad mom.
Allison, is it common that those closest to the victim often don't know what's going on?
Yes, it is, because they're usually trying to protect the people around them.
Yeah.
Because inevitably your heart is going to break when you learn that this person that you love is hurting, and also it's their way of controlling the situation where they're trying to protect their kids. Like, if I tell my sister, will she go tell someone, and then he finds out I told, and then he does something to me and the kids. It's just incredible. It's the manipulation.
Yeah, because I know women are often isolated from the people they love.
Very.
You know, you can't see your sister. You can't see your mother.
Right,
yeah.
right. Another interesting thing I wanted to say, when, you know, for people listening, comparing an opioid addiction to a porn addiction. And again, I know that there are people out there who are like, well, opioids, of course, because you put it in your body and it's a different thing. But actually, in neuropsychology and scans, when we look at the brain, the addiction center lights up exactly the same as it does for opioids and porn and any other type of addiction.
Yeah.
But those two in particular were done in studies together. And it's the same response in the brain.
Yeah. I didn't know any of that until all of this happened. And I'm sitting in rooms with women who knew my sister better than I did. And I had to really take it all in and put the pieces together in my mind.
So then what happens next?
So I take custody of her children.
And how old were you at the time?
Oh, gosh. I was, I think, probably like 33.
Okay. Did you have
22.
children of your own?
I had one child of my own. And it was a fight for me to get out of the marriage to my ex, because it took much longer than it, quote unquote, should have, given what he was doing and what it was doing to me. But I wanted to keep our family together. And I thought it was very courageous of me to extricate myself. Again, there was no physical danger, so I was able to do that safely.
It was courageous of you.
Thank you.
Very.
So I was looking ahead at this new beginning for myself with my child as a single mom. I was in a really happy place. And like, I was probably in a really happy place for about a month before the police knocked on my door. Because it took a long time to heal and to, I don't know, to just be excited about a new future for myself. And then, the kids came to live with me that night. Noah, my son, was not very happy. He really liked being an only child.
Sure.
And he was in 3rd grade, so he was a bit older, so he could comprehend more about why is everybody crying and why are people keep bringing us food and, you know, what's going on? Where's Aunt Nikki?
How hard, because I imagine you couldn't tell him much at that age. You know, you can say certain things, but age appropriate.
Yeah.
And these kids, though, pick up that something is wrong.
Yeah.
And something is very wrong.
Yeah. And I think I was quickly brought into a child psychology world because as I'm also learning about domestic violence and their legal system, I have to care for 2 kids. And how do I explain where their mom is and where their dad is? And, you know, how do I explain this in a way they can understand? And I met with a psychologist named Dr. Crenshaw. He's the director of the children's home in Poughkeepsie. And he explained to me that obviously you have to do it age appropriately, but it's much more damaging to hide things from kids than to tell them the truth, because they can cope with the truth more than what their imagination is going to do with the gaps.
Right. So, and lies can really destroy the mental health of a person that's on the other side of the lie. I'm sure you know this, Amy.
Yeah.
But lies in families actually have been proven to create like tics and physical responses, even if the lie hasn't been spoken about in front of the individual. And then when the lie comes out, those things dissipate and stop.
Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating?
It
Because
really
it's the energy of the lie that they know something's wrong that creates that.
Yeah. And he also explained that it's crucial for them to have at least one trusted adult. And if they can't trust me, even on an energetic level,
right?
You know, it's really important for our connection that I'm truthful.
Because so much is hidden from children throughout our world.
And
right?
they're so patronized, too.
So patronized. And they're so smart. They're so instinctual because they haven't been adulterated by all of the nonsense that us adults have in our head. So, yeah, telling them truths. And also, you know, I think about when we talk to kids about sex, you know, they're willing to take in what they're willing to take in.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then they kind of just put the curtain down. They're like, I'll come back to them when, you know, in 6 months.
That's enough, That's enough, mother. That's not my kids.
Exactly.
They're like, okay, that's enough.
Yeah.
We're done here.
Yeah. So starting with the truth and then building on that so clearly feels like the right thing, but so hard. So hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have these children, and thank God they had you. And was there, I remember this story. I am familiar with this. I have not read your book yet. I'm going to read it after this. I intentionally didn't do that because I wanted my questions to be genuine and my responses to you to be genuine. But what happened next? I mean, sometimes this is a very long, painful process. Sometimes someone is incarcerated immediately. What was the process?
It was a very long, painful process with a lot of uncertainty. Nobody could give answers, not because they didn't want to, but because that's how the system is designed. It was just, we're waiting for the next step, and then the next step, and the next step. So how it worked in my sister's case is she was arrested immediately, and she was given public defenders. And then the DA's office, which had records of her as a victim, kind of sat on it for a bit. And about maybe 2 months later decided they were going to recuse themselves. Then it had to move to another county. So it was just delay. She ended up being held for so long without an indictment that her defense team was able to file a writ for habeas corpus.
Wow.
And get her out for, it was only 12 days. But they just kept moving the goalpost. And I kept screaming, like, there are children here. There are children who haven't seen their mother's face. When she was released, they hadn't seen her in 9 months.
Oh, wow.
And this is a 2-year-old.
They weren't even
one.
allowed to visit her?
They could technically visit her, but I don't know if you know this, the conditions at Dutchess County Jail are
terrible.
I can't imagine how bad they are after COVID. Pre-COVID, truly horrific.
Yes.
And the rules were very strict. I would go to the visiting room and I would watch the other kids. They would get yelled at if they went on their knees. They have to sit still. They can't touch their mom. They would just want to be held by her.
Right. Oh, that's
and they
horrible.
couldn't. It's mostly men in the room. It smells terrible. It's loud. And I thought, this is going to be worse for them. They're going to be more scared that she's here in this environment. So it was tough. They talked to her on the phone. But yeah, it was really, really hard to know the right thing to do.
That devastates me. Just for the mom and the children. That I'm so, again, I'm going to keep saying sorry because my heart is aching throughout all of this. I'm just so sorry this has happened. So she came home. She was out for 12 days.
12 days.
And then what happened next?
Then we had a new legal team. I go through the whole legal process in the book and I make it as simple as I can. It was very complicated, but I think it's important for people to understand, God forbid you're in this situation, but what it's really like when someone you love is incarcerated, because it's a tremendous burden on the family. But so she had to surrender back to play by the rules of the prosecutor because there's a lot of threats. If you don't do this, then this is going to happen. a lot of evidence is at risk of being suppressed. There's just a lot on the line,
Right, yes.
So the rules when you're on the defense side is you just don't want to upset the prosecutor and you don't want to upset the judge. So she voluntarily surrendered back to jail and hoped that would show the courts that she wasn't a flight risk and she could get bail. It took like almost another year for her to get bail. I mean, it was the longest process while she's being held in a subhuman place. In the summer, it's sweltering. In the winter, it's freezing. They don't have food. It's, she is a vegetarian. There was no options for her. She withered to nothing. I was afraid her heart was going to stop at certain times. It was just watching someone you love just like wither away. It's worse than a death in some ways. There's no closure. It's just like you're sitting and watching somebody in hell.
Mm-hmm. And to be just surrounded by that kind of cruelty. Mm-hmm. I mean, from the courts that are supposed to protect people to the jails that we hope are humane in this country, it makes me stutter because there are so many emotions that are coming up. Yeah.
And there was such a through line of punishment from what he was doing to her, whereas forms of punishment. Then she steps into a court system that's about punishing when you're on the defendant side, and the jails. It's not about rehabilitation. It's about punishing. This isn't a vacation. You did something wrong. Where we know most people who are in jail haven't even been convicted of anything yet. So yeah, it was just all the way around. Every angle was power, control, punishment.
Yeah.
Ugh, I just keep thinking of the word disgusting.
Yeah, heinous. I mean, there's so many words that are coming to my mind.
I don't want you to speak too much of the book. I want people to read it because I think this is a really important thing that, like the awareness needs to be brought to the forefront. Because again, I was thrilled when Amy here told me about you and the book, because I thought, oh my God, somebody finally wrote a book about this. I hope the world reads it. So I don't want to ask too many details in the book, but, I'm wondering, first of all, what an incredibly strong human you are. And I noticed the minute I walked in that you're wearing a sweatshirt that says hope on it.
Nikki actually painted this in Bedford.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Wow, it's beautiful.
It is really beautiful.
Yeah.
Sorry, Amy, were you going to say something?
I was just going to describe it.
Please.
It's one might say a full moon or the sun, and then this beautiful hummingbird of multiple colors overlapping it. And underneath is this beautiful script that says hope.
Yeah. Nikki's capacity to hold on to hope through everything was truly remarkable, and it inspired me. Yeah.
What was she like throughout all of this? Is that something that you'd want to share? I mean, again, those women that I worked with many years ago taught me more than I could ever have taught them. And the word hope was one of the primary ones that I learned from them. The resilience.
Was remarkable.
Like nothing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to these stories and them saying like, look, I had to get out for my kids. I had to get back out. I wasn't going to he tried to kill me and I had to kill him or her, but I'm not going to, even though that happened, I'm not going to let my life die. But like that level of strength was something that I had never seen. And so your sister clearly was this way, is this way.
Yeah. And it really was, I mean, she's always been a very creative and instinctually maternal person that I learned from, but how she what she became when she was incarcerated was beyond anything I could have imagined. I mean, she was in the most horrendous situations, and her response was to create, to the writing that she did, which I include some of it in the book, but I really wanted it to be like all of her writing because it was so powerful. And her art, like, we would have art shows for fundraisers and stuff while she was away, and she would always say, it's not art, it's just like doodles. And I would say, you don't understand the fact that you have the capacity to produce something like this when you're enduring what you are is a miracle. It just shows the capacity of us as humans. And I would store them all like they were like precious artifacts, because to me it showed her ingenuity and her resilience in a way that you can't like say through writing or through speaking, like, just look at this, look at what she's able to do. I felt like that was evidence that I wanted in the court, but that's not obviously what the court sees as evidence. But to me, it is evidence of her character and her determination to survive, which is really at the core of what happened that night. It wasn't even like she's like, I think I'm going to survive. It was something in her that instinctually survived.
Do you go into, you don't have to say it on air, but the details of what happened that night in the book?
It's so talked about and ripped apart in so many different news stories. You can get, the New Yorker did something. There's a piece by journalist Justine Vanderloon that goes step by step through all of her testimony. And I felt like I wasn't there that night. So I say what she told me. And actually, I have an audio version that I really am quite proud of because we included jail calls.
Wow.
So like in the book, I'll write about what she said that night. But in the audio version, you can hear her first phone call to me. You can hear her first phone calls with her kids. You can hear their teeny tiny voices and the crying that happens between them in a way that, writing just doesn't do. So, yeah, I say it as I lived it because I wasn't in the room when it happened. And I actually wasn't in the courtroom for trial because I was a potential witness. But all of the details are so out there. What I wanted to do was to get underneath all of the kind of true crime, like sensational stuff that people can like hook into and show the humanity, show what it was really like to survive this on like an emotional level.
Yeah, especially the history that she went through and the abuse as a child. And then, oh, God. Yeah. It's just excruciating. Yeah. It's excruciating to think about and process, but to be the person that went through all of that.
I know. And I don't know what she's going to choose to do with her story because part of her trauma is that she was encouraged by all of these people, myself included. Tell the truth. Say what happened. And she did it. And anyone who was in the room when she testified said it was like the most brilliant thing they've ever seen. Her strength on the stand was remarkable. She did the hardest thing and she said the truth. And then she was disbelieved. Yeah. And then she has the prosecutor's voice in her head retelling her life. That has been one of, if not the most damaging things that she has ever gone through. So, what she wants to do with her story and her lived experience, I'm sure she'll do something because she's very determined to help. That's what, she wanted to get home to her kids and she wanted to help other women. And she wanted to I didn't go through all of this for nothing. That was kind of her attitude.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a shared strength, by the way.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
We're talking about her, but I also want to say, clearly this is a part of the DNA because to be such a remarkable sister and do everything you've done and then write a book and put it out there for her. It makes me very fascinated about where you came from, the both of you came from cellularly, because there's clearly a survival fighter and warrior that is so beautiful in both of you.
Thank you. Well, I do talk about my mom quite a bit in the book because she was very villainized. She was villainized in the media that came out, and she was villainized by the prosecutor because everything kind of was trailed back to her. Ugh. And in the book, she does make some pretty big mistakes, but it is in an effort to protect her daughters and to teach her daughters how to live in our patriarchal world.
Yeah.
She was preparing us for the world we live in, but she had her own traumas and she had her own things that happened to her in her life that kind of changed her own alarm system to see what was really happening with Nikki. But that was another thing I really wanted to show, is to humanize my mom, because it was so easy to reduce her to her worst mistakes.
Of course. And the mothers are old. Amy and I were like grinding our teeth. I know we were thinking about the same thing. Even on the playground, when a kid does something, what's the first question? Where's your mother? Right. What about where's your father?
Right. Exactly.
It's always the mother that is blamed for all mistakes in spite of her own survival. Being a mother alone, even if life is wonderful, is the hardest job. It is exhausting.
Second that.
Right.
And moreover, again, it's how come there is a lack of acceptance acknowledgement, love around the fact that trauma begets drama, begets trauma, begets trauma. And that, first of all, none of us avoid trauma in our lives, but some traumas are more challenging than others. And your mom had her own storyline. And again, we can only do what we can do as parents, as friends, as sisters, etc. So why there is, the story around the social justice, or that's not even the right word for it. The how can you even call it a justice system? Because there's no justice. There's no justice. The legal system,
the social injustice system.
Yeah, it's so flawed, and it's always been a place of misogyny. Always. I have to read a quote because I was curious. So this quote I got, statistic, was that as many as 94% of some women's prison populations have a history of physical or sexual abuse before their incarceration. I mean, these are women who have suffered such violence, such trauma, and then to incarcerate them.
In a violent system.
Yeah.
Yep. And most of them are moms.
Yes.
Yep. And ripped away from your children. I know because I saw it firsthand.
Yeah.
It is a primal trauma.
Oh my gosh.
The pain that just standing between a mom who can't get to her kids and kids who screaming for their mom. And that's not a need I can meet. I can just support them through that. But I mean, I often felt like this is taking years off of my life.
Oh, yeah. I bet.
Like, it's just to hold that in my body, which is another reason I wanted to write the book, is to show these truly heart-wrenching but also uplifting moments with the children and with her that nobody saw but me. Because I would often think, if I could show this to a jury, if I could show this to people, maybe they'd understand.
Right, but it has to be that tangible evidence.
Oh, yeah, which
Versus
often gets suppressed and redacted.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes me very ill.
Yeah.
How are you doing today? I want to just say, how are you? Are you okay?
Yeah, I mean, I was not okay for quite a while. Living in uncertainty is so uncomfortable. It was just like a perpetual transition where even after she was sentenced to 19 years to life in prison, we were told there's a 1% chance that the appeals court will even see it. It's like they almost never get reversed. And even if it was very likely it would go to another trial with the same judge and we'd go through the same thing again. So it was just, I was always kind of looking to a future where it wasn't better. It was just harder. And not harder, but just hard, like a different kind of hard. And, my sister's hope really did sustain me. I had a community of women who I knew I could lean on. I felt like I was the right person to be with these kids. I felt like I was in the right place at the right time to do that. But in general, I've been up and down as far as my own self.
I'm sure.
But since she came home, I can't speak for Nikki because she's at the beginning of her healing journey. I mean,
of course.
I've been on the outside and I've tried different healing modalities and I've had a lot of therapy, and I wrote a book that at first was, I was like, this is a terrible idea. I'm just going back to these moments that I was so numb during, and I had so much adrenaline that I almost didn't feel them. And then I had to go back and feel them. It was like, this is re-traumatizing. I wrote it during COVID.
Oh, boy.
Like, this is terrible. But having done it and having it now being witnessed does feel like I have a leg up in my own healing. And just having her out of prison, and none of us have to go to a correctional facility every week. I have a lightness to me that I don't think I maybe ever had, because I was just coming out of such a bad marriage that it's just been so long of hard that for me, it's just, it's like remembering that there can be a best case scenario. And even when I say that, part of me is like,
yeah,
be careful.
I know that
The other shoe's gonna
PTSD.
drop.
I know.
But I am confident that I can handle what life throws at me. And the kids are thriving in a way that they hadn't before. And I think all of the work that I put in to make sure that they were therapeutically supported, the work that I put in to make sure that the kids connected to their mom, which was work. It was driving to a prison every week, paying for the phone calls, making sure, it was just a lot of uncomfortable work. It's paying off now. So I feel more settled than I have been. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard living with traumatized people. It's hard to know that it's a long road ahead. And I wish that it could just be like a neat and tidy bow, like, oh, she's out and everything's wonderful. That's just not how life is. And I think it's important that people know that the traumas inside of prison and the court, I mean, she was in trial in March. She was convicted in April. So this time period, just in her body, in all of our bodies, is like there's something in us that remembers. And it's hard. It's hard.
I can't begin to imagine. But yes, I mean, and it's not it's a very transitional period of time regardless in April, May, March, April. And then to have that very formidable feeling around you, I can't begin to imagine.
Yeah.
How, from your perspective, because again, we keep saying that this is from your perspective, how would you say, though, that she's doing at the beginning of her healing journey at this time?
I think I'm really proud of her because she could jump into work. Like, she could go work at a domestic violence shelter and kind of bypass her own healing. It would be very easy for her to do that. And she's committed to her healing. I was telling Amy we got a puppy, which is a lot of work. But for her, she was part of this program called Puppies Behind Bars in prison. So she raised service animals.
Wow.
And she's certified. She was actually released 6 months early because she got her certification. So that's her thing. Like, she's so good training dogs. And the dog that she raised was so important for her own regulation that we knew she needed a dog. So we got a puppy. She is trying all sorts of healing modalities. She's deep in therapy. She's, working on the medication aspect, which is hard. But she's in process and committed to healing in a way that makes me really proud of her.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
What about those beautiful children?
So like I said, they were 2 and 4 and 8. My son was 8. Now they are 9, 11, and 15. So we're in a very different stage of parenting. There's a lot of grief. I'm starting to think maybe we should at some point do some family therapy just because there's just a lot of loss. It's just difficult when you lose so much time with your children to get to know them again. And she saw them every week, but it's different when you live with them. And there's just a sadness that everything that she missed.
Oh, it's loss.
You can't
Tremendous
get that
loss.
back. Yeah.
I think family therapy is a fantastic idea, by the way.
But in general, the kids they're doing great in school. They have good friends. They have activities. You would never know it from the outside what they had gone through, which at one point I wasn't quite sure if that would be the case. We've been through a lot, especially one of her kids in particular. It has made tremendous progress where I'm now confident that everyone can be functioning, which is, for me, just really what I needed.
I want to add that, as an observer, as a community member, looking at all of the events and writings and fundraisers, that Michelle was not only kind of coping with the personal details, but was also spearheading an advocacy and community action that was so impressive. And I know that the community raised money for you and your sister and the children and taught the community. And this was, as Allison mentioned, this was a big story. And it created a lot of division. I mean, I remember being in my place of work and there was someone who was voicing something that wasn't terribly kind towards Nikki, like kind of like, oh, maybe she had it coming, that kind of attitude. And I had to literally like hold my hands. How do I describe this? I felt like I was going to get violent because I was so upset by that attitude. And I'm not a violent person. So I'm just trying to describe the emotional intensity. So I just want to also honor how much you did on top of parenting 3 children, on top of preparing meals every day, on top of your own healing, on top of all this other stuff. So I just so admire you and want to honor you and remind, I guess, everyone listening that a community helps and that the healing will go on for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And
Yeah.
I had an incredible group of women around me to carry that work. And like I was saying earlier, we very quickly realized this wasn't a unique scenario and that we could educate and we could just bring awareness to this glaring issue in our society that no one talks about. So it was very important for us from the very beginning to zoom out and to, as we're advocating for Nikki, remind people that this is also happening across the country in everybody's communities. And like you said, community makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I don't know that Nikki would be out of prison if she didn't have the defense committee and she didn't have such a large uproar of people showing up to events and spreading information and standing with her publicly and loudly. I think it made a huge difference with the appellate court.
There was a change in legislation during all of this. Could you explain that to us, please?
Yeah, which the change in legislation is also born out of community advocacy. It took 10 years in this state for it to pass. It's called the Domestic Violence Survivors Justice Act. And it basically gives judges discretion to when it's deemed that somebody committed a crime based, stemming from being a victim of domestic abuse. The judge can take that into consideration and give a lower sentencing structure. Mm-hmm. So whereas the lowest Nikki could be sentenced prior to the law was 15 years to life with the conviction she had. Under the law, if the judge said, yes, you are a victim of domestic violence and this crime happened because of that, the lowest could be 5 years. It took a very long time to get that passed, and it was signed into law a couple of weeks after Nikki's verdict. So it really felt like it was like for her, and it did spur a lot of advocacy, and it failed at first. The Judge McLaughlin in Dutchess County, who had seen all of the evidence and suppressed a lot of it, decided you were not a victim. And that really, I think that on top of what the prosecutor had said about her, that was the lowest I'd ever seen Nikki. She really just kind of withered to nothing. She felt so invalidated. Her entire experience was invalidated. And she was upset because that, these court decisions affect other court cases. Mm-hmm. So other judges could cite that Nikki had more evidence than most victims have. She, has all of this testimony, all of these witnesses. And if the law doesn't apply to her, it's probably not going to apply to other people. So thankfully, that is what the appellate court overturned. They looked at all of the evidence and said she absolutely was a victim by her partner. And the views held by Judge McLaughlin were arcane. They really, really went into him, saying it was just, these are archaic ideas of how domestic violence victims should behave. And instead of sending it back to him for another trial, they just resentenced her to 7.5 years, which at the time was like 7.5 years for surviving is that justice? But, now she's home. So we are very aware that law saved her life. There would be no choice but to have a life sentence without that law.
Is this judge still sitting on the bench?
He sure is.
Oh, of course
Can we
he
do
is.
anything?
He's up
Can
for
we do
re-election
anything?
next year, 2025.
Well, maybe that's where we
Maybe that's where
we
we
act.
need to step in.
The Nikki Addimando Community Defense Committee is very committed to getting him off
Preventing,
the bench.
okay, okay.
Because it's not just Nikki. We have had
No.
other people come to us for other decisions that he made. Lives have been lost at his hands. It's really serious. Judges hold a tremendous amount of power, and these are elected officials.
Well, count me in.
Thank you.
Me too. Me too. Me too.
Wow. Again, I don't want to ask too much because I want people to read the book because there's so many important details to be educated on. Even the one we just spoke about. Before that law, there was no protection at all for someone that defended their own lives and took the life of another.
Yeah.
It's just, there's so many facts that I can see you're educating people with. So I want I want them to read the whole book.
Thank you.
But do you have any more questions, Amy?
I have a couple. One,
Go,
how do
good.
they get the book? Tell us how you get the book.
Well, you can get them anywhere that you buy books.
Buy books.
Oblong over here in Rhinebeck has a bunch of signed copies. They've
Great.
been tremendous at supporting my book. Any independent bookstore should have them. But, you know, you can get it on Amazon.
You can get it on
yeah,
Amazon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anywhere. I mean, Barnes & Noble, really anywhere.
Yeah.
Poughkeepsie, Barnes & Noble has some signed copies. I was just in Newburgh and signed some. So,
Yay.
Yeah.
Yay. Good. So I have a question that maybe you address in the book. So I totally agree with Allison. I want everyone to read the book. But where do the paternal grandparents fall into place around the children?
it surprises people to know this, that I actually have a pretty good relationship with them. It's been tumultuous, but they really care about these children, and it's the last thing they have of their son. And I've always been hyper aware that they lost somebody very important to them, and I have always had compassion for that. I've seen their pain up close, and it's real. And it was very challenging to, have these drop-offs and pickups with the kids, and then literally the next day be in court on opposite sides. We have been through a lot, and as I've recently said to his mom, I don't know that anyone could have done it better than how we've done it. Not saying that's always been easy. It's actually probably been the hardest thing that I've had to manage because it's just been on me. But yeah, they care about the kids, and they see them, and the kids love them. And we've had some very hard conversations, especially around her coming home, and have come to agreements. And I think I always lead with compassion, and I want to believe they have a respect for me for how I've raised the kids and how I've always included them, even when it would be easy for me to cut them out. They never fought for custody or anything. We've been able to do this amicably in a truly impossible situation.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. So I have a quote here that I feel like I have to share with both of you because I'd love your opinion about it. So this is a quote by Elie Wiesel. Do you know who he is? He said, "We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented."
I include that quote in my book.
Oh,
You
my
did?
goodness. Oh, now I got the chills.
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's in the face of what you just shared, which, oh my God, talk about strength and wisdom and that compassion you were able to feel towards his parents. In that respect, you didn't take sides. You were able to be neutral in the most positive of ways. But then it had to shift, as you said, the next day in a way. It's so powerful.
Well, I never pretended to them which side I stood on. We actually had a very clear conversation where she said, I'm going to be on the side of my son. You're going to be on the side of your sister. I was vocal, and I stood by my convictions because I do believe that especially when the oppressors like the state of New York, if you're not loudly on Nikki's side, then you are on the side of the oppressor.
Right.
It was more apparent than ever to me going through this that you have to stand up and say something and make your position known. Otherwise, the default is that you're on the side of the oppressor.
Right. Right. Wow. Well, I think you're incredible. And
Thank you.
It's people like you that inspire me to keep working for other people. So thank you for inspiring me. And I'm sure every single person that's listening, and your sister too. Thank her for inspiring all of us.
Yeah, I will pass that on.
What a story of survival this is.
Yeah.
I wish you both health and healing and space, time in nature to just breathe, because I would imagine all of you held your breath for so long, and that's just beyond hard. So thank you for joining us.
Can you remind us again of this judge and what he did and what we can do as a community together to prevent people like this from making these completely inaccurate, inappropriate rulings?
Yes. His name is Judge Edward McLaughlin. He's sitting in the Dutchess County Court. He is up for re-election in 2025. So the most powerful thing we can do is to vote him out. I also want to say, while I have you, that one of the more heinous things he said in the book, I write his entire transcript of what he says to her at sentencing. He concluded that she must have reluctantly consented to the rape. Reluctantly consented. Which I think speaks volumes about his understanding of trauma and his misogyny and his just viewpoints that should not be sitting on a bench and deciding people's futures.
Absolutely. His completely skewed, privileged white male perspective on and making these judgments for women makes me sick.
And he said, someone who made the choices you made must be a broken person.
This is a white guy.
Oh, yes, of course.
So this is a person who's never felt fear.
Yes.
He's never felt violated against. He's not making assumptions, but we know this is true for a lot of white guys, right? That they don't know what this kind of fear is. So how can they possibly rule empathically around it, sympathetically around it?
Right.
That we're in 2024, Allison. How is it possible that we still live in the culture that questions rape?
Well, and then again, this is why this is happening all of the time and no one knows about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they vote down a party line. They're not really looking at the judges. The judges hold so much power, and they sit for 10 years. You know, the voting is so important.
Makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah. So remember,
I'm gonna
everyone
go home
out
and make a
there,
sign.
make sure you vote, and remember, a rapist is a rapist is a rapist.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to Vulva Views. I'm Allison Chawla, psychotherapist.
And I'm Amy Novat, gynecologist.
Remember, do not forget to vote. Do not remain silent and support the oppressors.
Vote, vote, vote.